Welcome to Helping Hands, the program that celebrates the people across Australia who make the world a better place. Coming up today.
For a lot of these young people, it's not the new normal, it's just normal. And it's always been normal. You've got stories of little kids walking up to television sets and trying to swipe to get to the next channel.
We'll feature 2 panel discussions looking at what it means to live in a digital age.
We have to be talking to our kids about the positives, about the negatives, about the healthy ways that they can engage.
Let's start with us as parents to try and model the proper use of the internet, and also what exactly are we posting up there.
And look at the impact technology can have on the entire family. And we invite you to connect at helpinghands.tv. Living in a technology-driven world can be both advantageous and harmful on many levels and in so many areas of our lives. Children today are being parented by people for whom screens have always been a normal part of everyday life. There is no doubt that technology has and continues now to change the way we live and interact with each other. First up, Laura and the panel discuss what it means to live in a digital age for parents.
Thank you so much for joining us. With me on the panel today, we have A.B. Kokodia, who is a Professor of Counselling. We've also got Katie Kobler, who is the Director of Your Choices, and Kieran Scaria, who is a Twitch live streamer and also known online as Pastor Scar. Good to have you guys with us. Looking at the way that parents engage in digital environments, it's a lot. It can be huge. A.B., what would you say about how the digital age has changed the way that people parent?
I feel like it's a good thing. We have more access to resources as parents. The digital age, yes, it does have its pros and cons, but I think we have more pros because now we can jump online and say, where do I need help? Still on the same note, you can say, listen, this is a kind of app that would help me to keep tabs on this or that. So I would say I have more pros in my head than cons.
And Kieran, you're talking with young people in digital spaces all the time. Absolutely. For the parents of those children, how do you think they can model well what it looks like to use technology well?
Yeah, well, it's actually interesting that you say that because we've found a lot of parents that are spending time with their kids in our live stream and in that space. We never anticipated that, but unlike a traditional youth group where if you're over 18 you can't attend, here anyone can. So all of a sudden you've got, mum, dad, 2 brothers and 2 sisters that are all in the live stream, all with their own screen names, all being there. And we've had parents give us feedback saying, this is the first time I've ever been able to actually participate with my kid, and that I then knew the lingo, and I was in that space where other parents were really confused, but all of a sudden I was kind of the dad or mum that knew a bit more about it because they were watching Pastor Scar together and they knew that that was something that they can relate to and that kind of thing. There's a big learning curve, don't get me wrong, but seeing them getting in there, I've had some really incredibly encouraging feedback from parents that are just like, I've never connected with my son this way before because normally he's gaming and I'm here either not or telling him not to, whereas now while he's gaming, I just game with him in that way, even if I don't play, because I just am around in that space, which is what this opens up for. So,
and you don't think that doesn't ruin it though? Because I know for teens especially, they'll be like, no, I don't want my mum, I don't want my dad looking at what I'm doing. I want this as my own space.
Totally, but I think a lot of that comes down to the way that the host phrases it. For me, because I'm trying to encourage that, I'll hype it up. I'll be like, how sick is this? This is, Timmy's mum is in and she's winning. She's actually beating everyone. And then everyone's cheering in the chat, typing, go Timmy's mum. And all of a sudden Timmy's mum was like, okay, that was actually really fun. When's the next one? And so we see that happen. And I think a lot of it comes down to how you phrase it, how you do that. And all of a sudden Timmy's a little bit less embarrassed because Timmy's like, we actually had a good time. That was great. Mum didn't embarrass me, but mum had a good time. And so we've seen that a lot over the last 5 years, and it just continues more and more.
Yeah, it's great. You're setting up a space where that's all, accepted. And I think as well for the parents, Katie, the way that parents, carers use technology themselves, do you think there's ways where they can maybe accidentally pass on bad habits to their kids?
Definitely. I think that as adults, we all have the capacity to engage in the online space in a really problematic way. I think that we all need to be really mindful of that. And I know I talk a lot about boundaries, but setting personal boundaries is really important. The dinner table, in the bedroom, that kind of thing. There's a really very interesting area of research that I've just stumbled across recently around phubbing, which was a new word for me, but it's phone snubbing, which is a thing, you know, and we all know it's a thing. But the research really interestingly talks about, you know, how much it impacts our relationships, just having a phone, even sitting on a coffee table when we're talking to somebody else. But we all know the feeling of talking to another adult and they're just looking at their phone. And we possibly all know the feeling of talking to a teenager when they're just looking at their phone. And I think that the way that we engage with our kids, we have to be really careful there, because actually what that does, the research is really clear around this, that if we're looking at our phone instead of looking at the person, if we're prioritising the phone instead of prioritising the person, it communicates to them that we value them less. And you know, I don't want that for my colleagues, I don't want that for my friends, but I certainly don't want it for my kids. And I think that if we can model a healthy relationship with tech, what it does is it puts us in a place to parent our kids well in that space. And it can look like sitting down with our kids in a really gentle way and saying, hey, I watched you today with your friends and I noticed that you prioritised your phone over your friends. Can we talk about that? And it really puts us in a position, if we can navigate it well, to help lead our kids and encourage them towards navigating tech in a, you know, positive way.
Don't go anywhere. There's more to come.
If I didn't know what I know, if I didn't have the history that I have, and I just looked at the world right now, what parameters would I need to put in place?
AB, if you're a parent who has gone, oh my goodness, my tech habits, maybe I'm not, you know, setting a good example, how do you as a parent adjust what you're doing and maybe learn what you need to so that what you pass on to your children is healthy?
I think it's a bit of mindfulness to it, as in what am I doing and how would I like to model good use of technology. Little things like what you post online, because we all know our internet footprint just sits there. It takes a lot to scrub it clean. But if you're that person that's very active online, you post in all sorts, whether it's drunk photos or obscene and or language and all of that, you want to rethink that in the first instance, because whether we like it or not, young people now, just all you do is Google this and Google that, and it's all up there. So I'll say let's start with us as parents to try and model, you know, just a proper use of the internet, and also what exactly are we posting up there. And then from there on, we can then say, this is what I expect, these are the boundaries. That's a start, I'd say. That's a first place to start.
One of the difficulties is just how much screens and technology is involved in our lives. Like we organise our work on there, we're watching TV for entertainment purposes. The multi-screen thing, Kieran, what are your thoughts around that? Is it unhealthy to be multi-screening? Should we just be doing one at a time, or is that combination okay to, you know, make the most out of everything?
Talk about the new normal and that kind of thing. For many people, young and otherwise, multi-screening is just a normal part of life, right? The TV that I've got at home can literally be turned vertically, and you can have the TV show up the top and still Google something in the bottom half of the screen. It's bizarre, but this is the technology that they're coming out with, because it's like they know that people just want to be involved in various things all at the same time, and to really do that. And so I think navigating that to go, while you're in your entertainment mode, perhaps it does amplify your entertainment if you can see the live scores at the same time as watching the sport that you're watching, for example, with greater breakdowns. But when you're done, be done. You know what I mean? So to know when are you on and when you're off, and recognize that, you know, there are a lot of people that these days can multitask pretty well, and it is, a lot of people are wired that way.
Katie, I think of the way that for parents, life is about multitasking. Like, you've got the kids who've just come home from school, great, but you've got to get dinner ready, maybe you've got to address some work concerns. In those instances where you have to be both with your children and attentive to things online, how do you do that well, or communicate what you're doing so they don't feel excluded?
One of the tips that I often give, and I know I practice this in my own life, is my kids are like, get off the phone, Mum. I'm like, guys, this is what I'm doing, you know, and showing them that I'm not choosing fun over them, but I'm doing something that, and it comes to an end. It's a quick email, and then I'll be back with you, you know. But yeah, I think we do have to be careful to not, you know, to set aside times for that, lists and emails and all the things, and yeah, prioritise our children when we can.
So AB, how do we help households have healthy relationships with technology?
Oh, just like Katie said, we shut down. You have boundaries and you say, because for instance, I know people who say all the phones go into this cupboard at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. and that's it, or you shut down the Wi-Fi. We can't really do that now, shut down the Wi-Fi, but you just shut down when it's time to shut down. Just boundaries need to be set as a family.
If you are a helping hand or would like to see a helping hand from your local community featured on this program, visit our website and be in touch. We'd love to hear about the people and organisations across Australia who are making the world a better place.
Head over to helpinghands.tv and our social channels to join the conversation. As parents and caregivers, it's important that we understand the magnitude and impact of our actions and the impact technology has on us. After the break, we'll shift the focus on the conversation to empower children to make healthy technology choices. Welcome back to Helping Hands. This is where we celebrate the people who make the world a better place. Today, we're looking at what it means to live in a digital age for parents, children, and everyone in our community. Kieran, Katie, and Professor Kokodia join Laura Bennett to continue the conversation.
We are talking about the impact of really digital technologies on young people, how we engage with it. Katie, what impact do you think the digital age is really having on kids?
It is having a huge impact, and I think we have to acknowledge the positive. Young people today are exposed to more information than any other generation before, and that can be fantastic. But there also is challenges with that, of course. We talk a lot about the impact of pornography, and you know, young people today are exposed to more sexual content. Well, they have the capacity to be exposed to more sexual content in one night than what their ancestors would have been exposed to in multiple lifetimes. And of course, that's challenging, and it comes with a whole bunch of other challenges that roll off the back of that, the way they engage in relationship, the way that they see themselves, and of course the way then they respond and engage online. And so it really can be challenging, and I think there's a lot that parents can do and a lot that we can do in helping them as well.
And starting at such a young age, that is wild. I mean, we're talking about kids, and like you say, there is such access there. Kieran, for you in that kind of digital environment, do you think that kids see it the same way? Like, it's one thing for parents and carers to go, this is not great, but do kids think, hey, this space maybe has some negatives as well?
I think one thing to recognise as people that aren't kids is that for a lot of us, we look at things and we use the term the new normal, especially post-COVID, right? It's the new normal, things are now technology. For a lot of these young people, it's not the new normal, it's just normal. And it's always been normal. They've never known the world beforehand. So technology's just been embedded in what they do. You've got stories of little kids walking up to television sets and trying to swipe to get to the next channel, as opposed to going and grabbing the remote, which to us is second nature. And so in that sense, we almost need to shift our frame of thinking to go, well, if I didn't know what I know, if I didn't have the history that I have, if I didn't do schooling the way that I did, and I just looked at the world right now, what parameters would I need put in place? You know, how do I safeguard from things like pornography, things like other things like that, that maybe none of us had to deal with, but they absolutely do? And so shifting our headspace from going, let's get it back to what it was, but instead going, technology is advancing whether we like it or not. We've got to try and keep up and figure out how we can help them in that journey.
It's not going to be what it was, and like you say, we've got to acknowledge that. And AB, I know for you, working with kids right in that demographic, do you see there as being both good things and negative things about the increased presence of technology?
Yes, I do agree. There's the good and the bad. The good, as we know, is being able to kind of be on top of what's going on with your children or young people in your lives, around even just being able to track what they're looking at and being that person that's a guide, even though it's from afar. Yes, you've talked about some of the negativities, Katie, but I find that there are positives as well, like a kid needs to get on the bus, for instance, prior to all of these advances in technology. We just pray they get home in one piece. Now you can have, in a healthy way, some kind of tracking device attached to a phone or whatever, and that gives us all just a bit of peace of mind. The negativities are there, but I feel like the positives outweigh, and it's all about educating ourselves and the children, being open to education.
And part of that education really comes from understanding boundaries, knowing what a healthy boundary is. Katie, how do we do that with kids? How do you, from a young age, train up a child to understand a healthy boundary around technology?
Yeah, look, we encourage parents to have conversations with their kids and to set boundaries and also to engage filters. And I think those three things together are really important. We have to be talking to our kids about the positives, about the negatives, about the healthy ways that they can engage. And we have to be talking about it from a very young age and teaching our kids to engage in a healthy way. We have to have boundaries, and what I mean by that is times and places where there are no devices. And, in the bedroom, we suggest around the dinner table, when people are talking to you, having a conversation with you, that you prioritise the person. And then also engaging with filters where you can, because every young person is interested, they're curious, and that's wonderful. It's the way that we were created. And so we want to encourage the parents to set filters that can protect and help to guide their kids' curiosity.
And I want to get your thoughts, AB, on this then, because for young people, as we've said, they're growing up in the digital age, right? You've got a generation of people raising these young kids who aren't innate in that world necessarily, and yet trying to enforce rules on an environment they didn't grow up in. So if you're trying to help a child understand why these rules are in place, why these boundaries need to be there, how do you do that well?
My feeling is we want to ask for help ourselves as grown-ups. You want to attend your own whatever, upskilling and learning around parenting in this age. I don't assume every grown-up has the answer. So I would say put up your hand as a grown-up, go attend your own, little session or ask for help from the specialists. Before you can help the kid or support the child. Yes, as grown-ups, you want to set boundaries. Children work with frameworks. Young people like structure. All the research says that's the way to go. But the whys, that's important. Why are we doing this? You'd be challenged by a teenager and say, and why is this the way to go? And how do you respond to that as a grown-up? So you want to go do your own learning, attend, there's no shame in it. Attend your own sessions. There's all sorts of parenting, education opportunities out there. All we need to do as grown-ups is ask for help.
So then, Katie, what would you say to that? If you notice somebody's got unhealthy boundaries, how do you help them, for one, realise that and then address it?
As parents, we have a window of opportunity in the early days when our kids are little, and I know there'd be people watching who don't have little kids, they've got teenage kids, and but I think that we can, if we can start this conversation young, start with boundaries young and set a good example when our children are little, there's not so much pushback as they get in, because this is just the way it's always been. Phones aren't allowed in the bedroom. We always have dinner and we always talk. And so I think that's really important. But I agree that it has to be a conversation with our kids when we're setting boundaries. It's give and take, and let me hear you. Okay, let's tweak that rule. Let's tweak that boundary. It's a work. It's a continuous work that we work through. Yeah.
And I think also the willingness to continue to learn, because technology changes and adapts quicker than anything else you've ever experienced in your life.
It's a really good way to put it, guys. Thank you all so much for your contributions today, and thank you so much for watching as well.
If there's a topic that you'd like to see discussed on Helping Hands, visit our website and be in touch. We love talking about the things that make the world a better place.
Did anything that Kieran, Katie or Professor Kokodia say resonate with you or give you something to think about? I found it beneficial to hear a conversation that looks at both the positive and the negative ways that technology is changing the world around us. What do you think it means to live in a digital age and the way our society is changing to adapt to technology? I found it interesting today to hear how the way adults use and embrace technology has a flow-on effect to younger people. Perhaps like Professor Kokodia, you focus on the benefits that technology offers and you remain aware and seek to empower yourself to manage the negative side effects.
Let us know about the Helping Hands in your local community at helpinghands.tv. Send a photo or a short video and tell us about your local heroes in 25 words or less.
Thanks to Kieran, Katie and Professor Kokodia for joining Laura in the studio today to discuss this very important topic of what it means to live in a digital age. And thanks also to you for being part of the program. Join us online to keep the conversation going. I hope to see you next week here on Helping Hands.